our guests today, the panelists today, is about the impact of access restrictions. I mean, in these times, we have a scenario where the bicycles may not be accessible to a lot of people who would like to use them. Then there would be scenarios where it's not possible to travel all across the city. In these kind of situations, what is the take of our panelists on that? How are they thinking about managing the micromobility businesses? What is the prospect of micromobility businesses? What new innovations are you would you like to think of? So let's start with that, I would say. So I would first call upon Aniket. Uh, on this point, could you say a few things? What what are the kind of innovations that you are thinking of regarding impact of access restrictions?
Yes, definitely, Premji. So the thing is, yes, the opportunities and everything else is already around zero. So what I say is, the operations and the service operations throughout the fleet area, like and we have operations in Thane and Raipur. The activities and the operational activities are totally down to zero. And when it comes to containment zone, which have been identified, where the cases have been identified actually, so the municipalities and the local administration have totally isolated those pockets. But the problem is, previous station is actually segregated around the city to cover it, to provide it thorough connectivity for a user. So generally, what happens in a pocket where the cases have been identified. So those pockets have been totally isolated from the rest of the cities, and the movement to those places have been totally restricted. So uh, the thing is, since the lockdown is opening up, I see there will be the new guidelines will be coming up with from the health authorities and the local governments where those pockets will be left aside and the rest of the cities will be opened up. And uh, and from the operator perspective and from the operation side, I can say we will be thinking on providing the satellite station soon, where we have mobile stations placed at some localities outside the containment zone where these cases have been identified, and to provide actual connectivity from the rest of the stations. Further, as I can say, we have operations in Raipur as well. So I see there will be a guideline coming up soon for the Raipur to be opening up by uh, by second week or so next month. And uh, uh, yeah, that's it. So as of now, uh, there will be a subscription plan that we will be planning soon. So there is another subscription plan that might be coming in where we will be planning on leasing the cycle for about a week or so with the operator, since the battery is there in the bicycle. Since we have 50-50 ratio of e-bike and the normal cycle, so e-bikes can be rented out to the users for about 4 or 5 days since the battery lasts till then. And we'll be coming up with new subscription plans, and there will be a lot of rework have to be done on the operation side as well. And since there are a lot of workers we have to keep them paying as well. So there is a lot of revenue generation activities that we will be doing post lockdown, and lot of campaign will be coming in. So yeah, that's it as of now.
Yeah, those are technical issues, and in fact, that's the second point. We will come back to that. The second point,
Yes, sure.
the technical issues, at the moment which you are encountering, and what you would like to do about it. So we'll just carry this forward about the impact of access restrictions. I would just request Mr. Jain now to share his views regarding, sir, these kind of access restrictions which are there in place. How does it impact the business?
Sure, sir. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, service providers and users both faced a big problem. After lockdown 3.0, life got some space to move, but only few things become operational. Of course, public bicycle sharing was not one of them. So when it came to our knowledge that now we have to live with COVID-19 and lockdown 4.0 implemented with the same mindset, most of the service providers came out with some solution, innovative ideas to serve their customers, keeping all restrictions in mind carefully. Despite of all these things, we felt that users are not ready to use public bicycle sharing service. Those who are open to use. Being service provider is our being a service provider. It's our duty to provide safe and secure ride to our customers. Regular sanitation of cycles and sanitation and visible mark of social distancing on stations. These two things must be our habits in future. During lockdown, sharing service may play a key role in health and social distancing, especially for all those people depends on public or shared transport for work and fitness. So basically, the one solution we find out for this time, the only system is hiring for a long tenure. The people are not coming out for a short term and sharing the cycle time to time. We can offer the cycle for longer tenure. So that was the best solution, and we are offering to our customers. They can take the cycle for a long period, for a week or a month, on a very reasonable price, so they can afford the rent of that cycle. And we are maintaining the maintenance or repair and maintenance we are taking at our own. If they feel some kind of a maintenance is required, they replace the cycle. They drop the cycle at our stand, and they can take another cycle in lieu of that. So the people can make the chain of this type of things. So we strongly recommend that during this period, we should provide the cycles for a longer tenure. We could not compel the user to use the cycles which is used very regularly, very frequently by the other users. So no one is going to take the danger of corona that cycle was not sanitized and the people who is dealing it there is properly not infected. We cannot assure him. So this is the only solution we find, that the longer tenure can be a solution for this.
Okay, okay, okay. So now on that theme, coming to Gargi now, what are your views on this? How is Yulu looking at this?
So, talking about the impact of access restriction, yes. So, like in all the cities that we operate in, uh, hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So, in all the cities that we are operational in, all the cities have faced the same issue. But Maharashtra is still, in the process of battling with the scenario. But in Karnataka right now, the things are looking better. So the things are opening. There are more vehicles flying on the road. There are more offices that are operating, and hence we have started resuming the business here. So what we have basically done is on the app, if you look at the Ulu app, you can find the timestamp like when the bike was last sanitized. So based on your comfort and everything, you can use the bike. So it shows the exact timestamp if it was sanitized half an hour ago or maybe 1 hour ago or 2 hours ago. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to sanitize, the bikes in a duration of 2 hours, because what we expect is for the bikes that we have deployed on road, we are expecting a ride to happen in a 2 hours time. So basically, what we are trying to do is sanitize a bike after every single ride. So this is the thing that we are doing right now. And yes, about the restrictions. So during the lockdown process, we had to pull out all the bikes from the streets and put it to a safer place, so that people are not curious, and also that we don't want bikes being available and people trying to use it and then not being able to use it. So we were in total sync with what the government wanted, that the people stay indoors, people stay quarantine, and they are not out on the streets. So we were in total support of it, and that's why we did that. So as of now, where the business has started resuming, so we have also started resuming the businesses for the people's convenience.
Okay. Mr. Srivastav, now coming to you.
Yeah, sure. So the access restrictions of the bicycles and the stations for the users. So what happens whenever we plan for any of the station in any of the cities? So there are certain things which we take care while planning itself. So one is that we identify the places which are very, very thickly populated residential area as well as commercial area. And broader classification is one is called utility area, one is called recreational area. So basically, these two things are the main thing which we keep it in mind. So after the restriction, COVID restriction, the recreational stations were totally stopped. Utility stations were also stopped, but there is a way where we can open it and people can start using it. Second is that, I mean, there are some stations where people were really not able to go because they were falling into the red zone. So even if I open my station, people are not going to take the bikes because they are guarded by people. They can't even reach to the station. So that is a very reason for it. So access is not an issue as long as the government opens the permission about all these things. So the problem is the riders are not really coming out to take any kind of risk. So they see a threat in everything. Even if to ride the bicycles, to go somewhere. So that is the main thing. And what happens in otherwise also, I mean, even if the COVID situation was not there. So what we do every 3 to 6 months, we take out the data of the bicycles, taken from a station. So whichever data show as the lowest usage. So let us say a station is taking only 3 to 4 bikes per day. So what happens? It comes into my last preference in my Excel sheet. So again, we go to the government because smart bikes projects are mainly, through the contract. So what we happen, I mean, and we go to the government, back to the government and tell them that these are the underutilized stations. We are looking for something else. And we go to a new station and then we start a business. So this is how we do it. I mean, everything can be curtailed with the proper planning. So this is my take and Smart Bike's take on this.
Okay, so regular monitoring of this thing. So coming now to planning. So what are your views on this?
Yeah, hey guys. So definitely, as a lot of the other panelists mentioned, the entire country was under lockdown for a very long time. For past, let's say, 10 days or a couple of weeks, it has started opening up to a certain extent in partial phases across India. Definitely, few cities have fared far better than a few others. So we being in the shared mobility space face exactly the same problems over cars or bikes or any other form factor that we have, right? Is when the paranoia of a threat is the maximum in the public, there is a need for validation of how exactly are you sanitizing and how do I even trust you, right, as a service provider. So we are also on the same phase. In fact, soon you will see the exact video of sanitation available to the user on each of these individual assets that we have. Definitely, it makes a lot much more sense to show all of this up in terms of technology investments that we have on cars versus any other form factor, because the average transaction value is far higher there. But even on an electric bike, which is versus normal bikes, the transaction values are slightly higher there. It makes a lot of sense for us to ensure that between every booking, you touch these assets and sanitize them fully, and give the validation to the end consumers. Without that, we don't see how just making a statement that I have sanitized this asset at a particular time point, or giving them a safety badge, or you see this all across, right? Ola, Uber, Zomato, Swiggy, food deliveries, all of them, they are trying to do this. But I, as an individual customer, will never go by just you saying that to me, right? I actually want to see that. I actually want to feel that, right? So that is what our endeavor has been to ensure that as the restrictions lift and the subdued demand slightly kicks off, definitely we are seeing that on a self-drive mode, a lot much more interest is there in terms of demand, especially because public transportation is not going to pick up, which means that private players have to play this role of connecting slightly longer distances for people, which means that the form factor that we have chosen, which is the electric bike, which can serve even like 20-25 kilometers, is perfect for the given situation for in-city use cases, right? So from the impact of the restriction in itself, we see that there is a silver lining in all of this for businesses, when it comes to standing true on the service expectations of the customers. So till now, whatever investments have done, you will have to do a one-up now. You'll have to up your ante and go farther, a lot much more, placing yourself as the end user. I am a father of two kids, and if I don't trust the service myself, obviously nobody else is going to trust that, right? That is how we see the impact of restrictions playing a role in shifting how the businesses see the services that they're going to provide.
Okay, okay. So, Dr. Fishman, now coming back to you, our panel their views on the first agenda point, impact of access restrictions. So now, what do you feel after hearing this? Maybe, I mean, with your experiences of what is happening in Australia and your experience from ongoing research, what do you feel? What are the things that we should take from this if you want to prepare a research agenda for the future? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with anything that's been said so far, and in many cases, because you're operators, you are much closer to the ground and you are understanding what needs to happen to be consistent with regulations, and you're also seeing what the public's response is to infection control and the response in terms of using your bikes where they're available. So I don't think there's really anything that can substitute for that experience, but what we're seeing in Australia is that the bikes have been taken off the streets in most cases, and because our wages are quite a bit higher than in India, it has meant that it's not possible from an economic perspective to have people cleaning bikes, sanitizing bikes in between each trip. So that's not economically possible for us to do that. And that's part of the reason why they've been taken off the street. I think one of the really important things here is that whilst there's going to be a lot of apprehension about trying to get on a bike that you know somebody has used earlier that day, as restrictions start to ease, I think people will start to weigh up the difference between what's the infection risk of using a bike versus what's the infection risk of using public transport. And because public transport carries so many more people every day into the busy commercial hearts of cities, there's actually a real opportunity to try and draw some of those many millions of people that used to get a train or a bus onto a bike share or an e-scooter. It might be things like sending out a small canister of sanitizer to people, so a branded small bottle, you know, it might cost $1 or something, to give people the assurance that even if they can't be sure that the bike was clean when they started, at least if they've got some sanitizer, they can sanitize the handlebars themselves, and that might give them the confidence to know that it was definitely done because they did it themselves. So that might be one option. But look, I think that at the moment, it's one of those situations. I don't know what the lockdown regulations are in different Indian cities, but I think we're at a point where we're just waiting until this is eased up a little bit, and then once that happens, it may well be the case that your bikes and e-scooters are busier than they were before COVID-19. As more people start to look for e-bikes and e-scooters as an alternative to getting on very crowded public transport, where it's not just the common surfaces like handlebar rails and those sorts of things, but also the air that people are breathing. And that is something that I think that fear will drive people towards individual transport, and because of the lower space consumption of e-scooters and e-bikes, they'll be looking to that. I really agree with a lot of the comments about moving towards a monthly subscription. So it's much better to have your bike used at a low rate, at a low cost, on a monthly basis by one user than it is to have them locked up in a warehouse. So if it's a choice between locking up 10,000 bikes in a warehouse and not earning any money, versus earning a little bit of money by having your members be able to subscribe a bike out and keep it in their home So it could be e-scooters are more popular for that because you can put an e-scooter in more places. It doesn't take up as much room. But I think the subscription model is something that makes a lot of sense in the time of COVID-19.
Okay. Just one thing on this. My take on this, something I'm really curious to know. As a school of planning, we have a focus on spatial aspects. That is why I had brought up this particular agenda point. First thing, impact of access restrictions. What comes to my mind is that are any of you thinking of integrating into your apps? Like go-to areas or no-go areas, so that people. I mean, when you're looking around for a bike as a customer, I mean, you get to know you get to know in advance that okay, there are some restrictions and it's not possible for you to access a bike in some place, or if some places are outside the say they're close to biking operations, so you probably cannot go and park it there if it's a dock system, so you cannot go and park it there. Okay, so that kind of advanced information, is there something on that, and any one of you thinking about that?
No, basically, we are connecting through the MRTS, MMTS, or the metro stations. Wherever. I mean, currently these are all probably stopped for everybody. So once they start, so they will be very very popular. This is how we planned it. But yeah, the feeder station, which are into your colonies and which are into your famous parks and other places, those can be restricted very well. So I mean, those can be used very well once the government gives us permission to run the bicycles. So the only issue is that the regulation is regulation has told us not to use the bicycles because of certain issues. This is one, and second, today we are so much scared to use anything. We don't know what is going to happen. I mean, the moment I touch my handle, or if I try to set adjust my saddle, so I don't know what is going to catch me. So that is the main threat we are facing. But otherwise, by and large, in a network of let us say a network of 500 stations in Chennai, so there will be, good reach of stations, and there will be proper connectivity of the transports also. The main thing is that the network plays a main role. And while choosing, whenever we do the OND survey or whatever we do, so this needs to be done properly. And every 3 months or 6 months, we need to revisit the stations on the popularity of the rides. And we should always change our stance with the help of government if it is a tender one project like ours. So that plays that helps us. And at the same time, as Mr. Fishman said, keeping all the bikes in your assembly plant or in a warehouse and earning zero, and you can always give us some offer of some kind of freebies to the customer so that we earn something. I think if not, we get a fraction of operation cost. That should be done. But the only thing is that once the government says, yeah, everything is open, so there is something called lockdown 5.0, and the restrictions are open on the public bicycle sharing system. So then how it helps. But still, I mean, even after that, we have a challenge as whether they are going to use it or not. So that is the big question mark at this moment.
So to add to it, what Yulu is doing here is like we have other participants also who are going ahead with long-term rental plan. So we too are going ahead with the long-term rental plan. There was a survey which was taken up by our users, and what we observed that is around 22 to 25% of the users are still not comfortable because they have that COVID fear in their mind, right? So they have preferred the long-term rental plan wherein a bike be delivered to them, they take care of the bike, and the operations will be done by us. So basically the battery swapping and everything would be done by us, but the vehicle would be assigned to one particular person. So this is one thing that we are doing. And the second thing is like you asked, like if there is a station where the person does not want to park the bike or cannot basically park the bike, but wants to take it elsewhere to his home maybe and keep it safe. So Yulu also has a feature of pausing your ride. So you can pause the ride, you can select a time duration, like for what duration you want to pause the ride. If you want to pause it for an entire night, you can do that as well. And using the same bike, maybe you can do the next commute in the morning. So this is something that we are doing, yes.
Just coming to Aniket now on the same point, the access restrictions and what we are discussing now, I just saw on your portal this interesting thing that you claim to be a hybrid. You claim to have this hybrid kind of operations where dock systems and dockless systems are combined. So there's an option of switching from. I mean, depending on the situation, you can also switch to a dockless system. So can you say something on that? I mean, whether it's working and how it can be, address this point?
Yes, Premjit ji. So the thing is, we at Paxis and Coolites, we have a hybrid kind of a model where the cycles are basically positioned at the station, but also they have a feature of pausing your ride to any other point outside the station. So what we have came up with is there is a lock that we have designed entirely in the in-house. That lock can be used as a dockless and as well as for the dock based bicycle sharing systems. So let's suppose if any station is out of any slot to park the bicycle. So once the user reach out to that station, he can also end his ride by locking that particular cycle there outside the station as well. And that same feature can be used for any place outside the fleet area, not outside the fleet area, but outside the station and the coverage area, where we used to charge, where we have charged user for not doing that thing actually. So the thing is, it is based on the municipalities who come up with any kind of a project. Let's suppose municipality A and municipality B. So they both have a different kind of a model where they want a dock-based bicycle sharing system, and other one wants a dockless kind of a model. What happens with the Pune area? So there are both the solution are there in the one system. And coming to the rental model, what we say. So there is actually a challenge coming up with that thing. So I see the new bikes and the batteries have a long range, as well as the battery lasts for around 4 to 5 days on approx of 45 to 50 kilometers on an average range. Let's suppose a user drives bicycle like on a daily average like around 8 to 10 kilometers on an e-bike. So still we have a 4 to 5 days of buffer where we can rent out the cycles to that particular user and charge considerable amount, not heavy, sorry, considerable amount. And it also depends on the subscription model. And also the subscription will be decided on a mutual consent, where the purchasing power parity will also be coming into the play here, where we have seen a lot of job losses and a lot of things happened during these last 2 months. And let's suppose people will be coming out and using the personal transport and not preferring not to go for the public thing. The best proxy here will be the e-bike and the electric infrastructure here. So yes, I see there will be a huge gap up, not the gap up thing coming up, but there will be a huge demand coming in the short run with the electric infrastructure as well. So yes, that's it.
Okay, okay. So now, just any of our other speakers, would you like to stay on this point and something more that you would like to say?
Yeah, Atul Jain, this side. Uh, Actually, we have worked on this since March 23rd because we did not rent out even a single cycle till today. So we were trying to change the scenario. How can we rent out these cycles? What is the options can we can offer to the customers or riders? So we are updating our application through making this kind of, these are the stations, this is the red zone, this is the green zone. In red zone you can't take the cycle, you can't drop the cycle. And on the similar way we are mentioning the green zones, so the commuter can come to know the where is the green zone we can take the cycle and we can where we can drop the cycles. So green zone means that he can move simultaneously on the roads. Green zone will depend on the situation of the roads, restrictions. These roads are free to move on that cycle. We are also trying to give the routes on which they can play the cycles. So some kind of these things we are trying to implement in our application. That is up to in next month, up to 2nd or 3rd June, we are going to implement all these things on with along with the new tariff of long tenure hiring system.
That's great, sir. That's great. That is exactly what I was thinking of. So you are
Yes.
integrating this into your app at the moment, right?
Yes, yes. Right now we are working on that, and it will be launched within a week. Next 2 3 days, we will be able to launch that.
uh, how are you integrating this data? I mean, regarding the zoning, this existence of green zones and red zones. How are you? From where are you taking this data? I mean, there be some.
Actually, we are using the Arogya Setu application where we are getting all the information regarding red zones, green zones, orange zones, containment zones. So we are having the complete data in respect of that. So we can segregate all the data and we are implementing in that our application.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Actually,
Sri.
we are also not operating in OL Delhi. So we are operating in very limited area. So we can find out the red zone, green zone very easily through Arogya Setu application.
Okay. So